Okay, so after the technical mitigation, which was all about designing or picking the correct design and devices for your security or the security part of your network, and second of that was the administrative mitigation. It had a lot of policies and steps to discuss and talk about. Now for the third and final type of mitigation that we need to consider and use, which is the physical mitigation. Physical mitigation is called physical, like, do you remember maybe the physical layer, which was all about things that you know and you see by yourself, you use by yourself. They are not imaginary or technological or technical things that you can see, physical things like cables or ports. So right now we have the physical mitigation, which is about things that you see and you use by yourself. It's not about a password that you are creating and you cannot see that. It's about the physical things like racks. And racks, just in case you had no idea or you have never heard before about a rack is the place, or it's not a device actually, it's where you mount your devices, where you should install your devices in the networking way. And without further talking about racks and imagining racks, those are racks. This is a rack actually. Where did it go? Okay, this is a rack from a rack company. There is a lot of companies in the world, but there's an image from them published on Google. So this is a rack, just like you can see. Actually, I believe this type is called a 42 unit rack. That's because you can have like those three dots in here. Three of them combined is called a rack unit. I don't want to talk about a lot about racks. Actually, it's not mentioned in our course at all, but you need to know what happens to racks and what are racks. So for physical mitigation, first you need to install your devices in racks. You shouldn't let your devices like lay down on the floor at all, or maybe you install a device on your desk, like a switch or a router, leave it just on the desk and leave it working this way. This will be really threatened by being accidentally touched or dismantled, or maybe the power cord might be accidentally maybe disconnected, etc. Or even the Ethernet cables, the fiber optic, anyone, anyway, and anything of those actually. So this is really a big threat for the device. You need to install and mount the device in something perfect and really suits this device and can protect the device. So those are racks. This is thing number one. Thing number two, and the most important things also, one of the most important also, most of the racks comes with an AC adapter installed inside the rack. So you only need to supply the rack with one cable of electricity of power, and that's it. All the 10-20 devices in the rack will take their power supply from the rack itself. So this is much better. Now you will use, I'm sorry, much lesser cables, power cables. Only one of them should maybe be extended throughout the room. And after that, so step number one, sorry, about physical mitigation is using racks. So racks are good. Racks must be used in such cases to protect me. Step number two is that my rack should have a door, a protection door, a door that is lockable. See, this is a lock. This is a lock that requires a key. This way, I hope that it's clear for you in the image. Okay, so this rack, there are racks that comes without a front door, a racks comes without a back door. This is really normal. It depends on the cost, on the basic, or I'm sorry, the purpose of the rack. There are racks that starts maybe of only 30 centimeters height, and by height I mean this dimension. Others maybe will be like a half a rack, which is the 21 unit this length, maybe even more until you reach the maximum of 42 unit. Actually, I believe that there is more, but the standards, the most standard that you will see in data centers and companies or networks will be the 42 unit rack, which is this one. So racks, I need racks. After that, I need my racks to have doors. After that, those doors should have locks, so I can lock it with a key and go. So if someone entered the room where the rack is, or someone wanted to reach to the device, he will find the device, but he will find the device mounted in a rack. This rack has a door. This door is locked with a key. So in that case, you will not be able to access your device and steal your information. Maybe this lock would be a card, an identity card. This is very normal. Maybe instead of the lock or the key or the card, maybe there is a fingerprint. This is very normal. This depends on the type or the technology or the model of this rack. So those are the first three things to know and notice, which is I must have a rack that must have a door and the door must have a lock. And the most important thing, where is that rack is? Where should I install the rack? In a data center or in a server room? SRV, like a server room, which is a room that is built and designed especially for racks, to contain racks and devices. This is the room that provides 24/7 power electricity. It never gets disrupted or shut down for whatever reason. It has some fire protection system to protect the devices from fire. It has some high quality air conditioning system to keep the climate always cold at maximum. Maybe I believe it should reach at maximum of from 15 up to 20 degrees. This is the maximum allowed temperature to reach inside a server room, because all those devices needs a really cold weather to work and operate normally, because they do generate a very huge amount of heat. So you need to store those racks in a server room or in a data center. Whatever it is, a server room or a data center, this room, this specific room must have a door, and this door must have a lock, and this lock might be also a key or an identity card or a fingerprint. So you can see there are levels of protecting your device. Just in case you were wondering, I believe we have, yes, this is what happens actually to the racks. Those are devices, those are routers, switches, some fiber optic devices. All of them are installed inside the rack. So you can see here that this is what's called a rack unit. Those three dots, all of them are called one rack unit, one RU. So this is called the rack unit. This is a device of one rack unit. There are devices bigger with might take up to 2 rack unit, 3, 9, up to 10 rack units. There are really big devices, and there are other devices, other big routers and switches that their height measurement is called half a rack. You can imagine that. So this is mostly means a 21 unit, or maybe a rack device, a one rack device. And yeah, yes, Cisco, Juniper, and a lot of devices companies in the world, they do produce one single router that have a height of an entire rack. You need one rack to mount inside of this big device, and I believe those devices have maybe a weight at minimum of 1 ton, 1000 kilogram, because half a rack routers, most of them cost about from 450 up to 600 kilogram. And yes, I'm not joking. There is really such devices. There are such devices available. Imagine what do they give to you. Some of them give you like 240 port. Each port is 10 gigabit per second in bandwidth. So those in terabits per second of bandwidth. So anyway, these are one of the very important things to know about physical mitigation, is that you should have a good and specific room for storing your devices. This room should be locked and secured in a good way. And after that, you have inside the room devices, but those devices should be installed or mounted in racks, and the racks should also have doors. Those doors should also be locked and secured. So like securing the devices inside the rack, each rack should be this is a pen. Each rack should have, what does this, I haven't wrote, I believe this is a mistake, should have like a metal or a glass door, because doors in racks can be either made of glass, so you can see the entire devices well. You can know the device what's inside the rack without the need to open the door. Or maybe you can also have a rack that's made of a metal door, but mostly this will be a perforated metal door. So it's not really a big metal door that you can see beyond, but it's all has this all those maybe tens of holes that you can see through them, but not really clearly. All the racks should be installed in the data center, and data center also should be secure. So this is what we need to know about the physical mitigation. And just in case someone had no electricity in 2020, I'm sorry, anyway, just in case someone did access the room after stealing the key or a card, or maybe hacked it, and after that this person maybe also did open the rack. This is step number 2. So he did access the room, he now did also did access the rack. So now he can connect his laptop to the console port of my devices, routers, switches, firewalls, etc., and he can gain access maybe to those devices. So one of the other concepts of physical mitigation is, now I have secured my room, I have secured my rack, now I need to secure the specific device, the specific networking device, which is the router, switch, or a firewall. And this should be done by using the device access control. Now I need to secure my ports, my console ports. I have talked a lot about console ports in chapter 1. This is also a console port. Some devices comes also with an auxiliary port, not just the console port. Okay, so this also gives the same access permissions like an access and a console port to whomever, a person or a guy that connects his laptop to this port. So what we have now is that just in case someone did access the room and the rack and wants now to access the device, so let me, for a third level of protection, of securing, of physical mitigation, I should also secure my device. So how can this guy access my device? He can access the device either through the console port, or just in case there was an auxiliary port, it's also an available option for anyone to access my device. So now I need to secure those ports, the console and the auxiliary ports. This can be done actually by using two methods, two-way. Method number 1 is that I can configure a password for the console port or the auxiliary port. I can, in the config mode, we will have a lab in a few moments, I can access the console port, generate a password only for this port. So whomever person in the future wants to access the device remotely using telnet or SSH, that is not related at all to this password that is only installed or configured for the console port. So this is method number 1, a password for the port itself, whether it was a console port or an auxiliary port. And method number 2 is that the same username and password, which are called the credentials that we used to talk about, was in chapter 1, it was chapter 4 in IP services. We had a video for SSH, and in SSH we created a username, password, and we assigned privilege 15 to this username and password. And we allow this username and password to access through SSH, so remotely. The same username and password, if you just wanted to unify all the usernames and password for this device, maybe you want to have only one username and password to access this device, whether this access was locally, and by locally I means physically by connecting to the access port or to the console port or to the auxiliary port, or remotely, and this is done by using telnet or SSH. So this same username and password, so this is called the login credentials. After I create the login credentials, there is an I here, I'm sorry. So I must assign the login credentials to one of those ports or to the same, or both of them at the same time. So what will happen after that is that now I have maybe a username which is called Sajjad and the password of 123. Never make it 123. We have talked about security programs before and policies, please, and passwords exactly and precisely. I'm sorry. So maybe I have a username Sajjad and the password of 123, and this username and password, and they are called credentials. I can use them to either for local access, like through the console or the auxiliary, or maybe through the remote access for Telnet and SSH. So in the lab, we have before talked about SSH. We didn't talk about Telnet and its configure because it's not related to this course at all. It has been removed. Now we will talk about the local security. So what if the device what if the device wasn't locked properly, which is physically, so someone will be can access the device using console or auxiliary port. I'm sorry, and those console and auxiliary ports still, I'm sorry, needs security and password to protect them. So now we have two methods. Method number one, to use a local password specific for the console port. That's it, only a password for the console port. This will not affect the login credentials. Or method number two is to use the same credentials and assign them to the console port or the auxiliary port. So let's see them. I believe if we use that practically in a lab, it would be better for you. So I have a router and someone accessed my router. I wanted to connect, but before, this router should be already configured. So to configure the device, the router itself, let us first use the first and simple way, which will be enable configure terminal. Let me change the name of the device and call it III-R1, and after that let's log in line console 0. So now we are in console 0. We don't have a lot of security options inside this line, but one of the most important things is that we can set a password for this specific line only. So okay, so let's set a password, and this password should be, make it like a strong password of 123 ASD like 456 and ZXC. I just hope I will not forget that, but it's a good password actually. So that's it, and end right to save the config. So let's see if this is enough or not. Okay, so this, let's try to have a console port, which is this cable, a console cable. We can connect it to the RS232, which is the DB9 port in your laptop or your computer, and connect it to the console port. So from my device, if I wanted to use the terminal to access the device, terminal, let's see, those are the defaults. We will not change the defaults parameters, and see if this is accessible. It is accessible. So this method failed actually to protect my device. Let us troubleshoot that. Why would it fail? Show run. Did the device accept it? Yes, line console 0 does have a password. So configure terminal, I'm sorry, it's not interface, it's line console 0. Any option that I have forgot about? Yes, there is logging. I believe we should add logging synchronous or login. Just login, and that's it. Could it be? Let's try again. So in the terminal, if a new session was established, yes, I forgot to type login to enable login on the port. So just right now, someone attached his port to the console port and wants to access to the router, and he needs a password. So let's try the password that we have assigned, which is 123 ASD 456 and ZXC. Yep, that is done. So this is method number one. Just in case this person just change his cable and connect it to the auxiliary, so now he should be able to access directly. Let's see. No, this is the terminal, and this is the same old session. Exit. Yeah, still. So exit. No matter how many new sessions we establish, this person can not directly, I'm sorry, yes, no password set. The person can directly access to the router. So let's protect the console, the auxiliary port also. This should be done by using the, what was it? Yeah, I just forgot it. line auxiliary 0. Yes. First, we should enable login disabled on line 0 until password is set. I'm sorry. I apologize. Let's make the same password 123. No, not the same password 456 and ASD twice. This is not a strong password actually. This is a common password, but just use another one. After that, the login. So now it's accepted a password and a login. That should be enough. I believe that it's still connected through the auxiliary. Oh, no, not this one, please. From here. Yes. Exit to establish a new session. Yes, now it's requiring the new password of the auxiliary, which was the 123456 ASD. Please, yes, that is good. So it's done. I think we should enable the password. This is another thing to talk about. Now it's asking for a password for enable. Let's talk about this in this video before I finish the video. The enable password is actually just in case someone breached the door, breached the rack, access the device, guess the password. Maybe he was stealing the password from anyone else, or maybe he's a corrupted engineer in the company for whatever reason. Now this person could have accessed their room, the rack, and also did access the password of the console or of the auxiliary. He will start at the user level. I'm sorry. So we want to type enable to access to the privilege level. We can set as password only for the privilege level. So this is a fourth layer of protection. Okay, so go back to the router and you'll type this small command, which will be enable secret, and let's make it like and just only as sajjad. That's it. End. Okay, so let's see if this will work or not. Now again, the same person, terminal, and enable. Now it's asking for the enable password, and it was only Sajjad. That's it. You see, so now I have full access to the device from my computer, and I can do now whatever I like. So please, you have a password for the, you have a password maybe for the room, for anyone who want to access the server room or the data center, a password to open the rack, a password to get in the device, and after that you will be shocked that there is a password also required for the privilege level. So having 4 levels of security is really hard right now for anyone to breach it or to hack the device. So this is method number 1. Just before I finish my video, I know it has taken a lot of time, but for the login credentials that we have talked about before, which is when we have a local username and password that I have talked about before and I've used them in the video of the SSH, we'll be creating a username. Maybe it will be Sajjad, I'm sorry, and this username have a privilege of 15, which is everything, and the password should be 12312345 So that's it, and save. What I should do after creating the local username and password is to assign the local name, the local username and password, the local credentials to the auxiliary port or the console port. So configure terminal line console 0 login local, accept the login local also, exit. This is in the console port, and end, save my config, and let's try our last shot just before we escape this video. This is exit, exit. Yes, so this one is asking right now for a password, but what password is this? What type of password did I assign to the, I forgot. I got it now. Okay, so show run. I have line console 0 and it has this password. Copy. So let's try. Yeah, I know. Paste. Hit enter. It didn't work. No worries. Okay, so again, maybe it's not asking about the one. Maybe it's asking about the password that we have just used for the, I'm sorry. Yeah, oh, yeah, 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 correct. I'm sorry. Very much. I'm a big, okay. Give all my apologize. So now, exit. Yes, now it's asking for a username and asking for the password of which one? The password of the privilege that we have just talked about. And that was, can imagine how much I'm forgetting everything right now. Yes, it was 123, 123, 4, 5, 6. Yes, and I'm done. I'm in directly. Okay, so what I have done is that the first try when I use the console port, I access using the local password that's only assigned and set for the console port. After that, we have used the local credentials, which are a username and a password, and access the console port, typed login local. So right now, anyone want to log in, they will log using the local credentials. If just in case you noticed, it's either in the console port I use the local password or the local credentials, not both of them. So the device preferred, this type of router preferred to use the username and password, because it's much stronger than using only a password. Okay, so login local is preferred more than the login only. And you can see, just like you saw, I've asked for a username and a password to access the device, and now I have accessed the device. So for physical security and for physical mitigation, I hope everything was clear to you. Just in case it wasn't, please comment down below in the video. I will be more than glad to assist you with. So just to summarize, you have to secure your rack, your server room, your rack, your console port, and your enable secret. All of those levels are required. So thank you so far for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video. To the next video, where we will talk about the upcoming technologies, and I believe it will be VPN. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the upcoming video. Goodbye.